Salutations, respected viewers. This is George from Ireland. This video is about Tucker Carlson's recent interview with Mike Avenatti, if indeed it deserves the description of an interview. So, Mr. Carlson, as you may know, is a demagogue, shock jock on Fox News. I think that expression can apply to a television channel, not just radio, and a notorious liar. Someone tries to laugh his way out of trouble, is always expressing exasperation at views which he doesn't share, things like that. So he's hyper-aggressive towards anyone he thinks isn't ultra-conservative like himself. And he's continually referred to Mr. Avenatti as a seedy porn lawyer. And he suggested he wouldn't say that whilst he finally got Mr. Avenatti on his show. However, the words on the screen did come up with that. So I'm not sure if Carlson personally broke his promise, but his team certainly did. So it was a dreadful interview, as in it reflects really badly on Mr. Carlson by being so discourteous to his guest and hardly letting his guest speak, interrupting him most of the time, saying, I'll give you this amount of time, but actually it was Mr. Carlson who was speaking the majority of the time. And like so many Fox News hosts, Mr. Carlson has got two modes, either sycophancy or else savagery. So he started monstering Avenatti, scarcely allowed to get a word in edgeways. Avenatti will be answering a question, and then the host jumps in with another one, questioning him, looking at him scornfully, being very loud, being as insulting as possible. You should watch the clip. It's instructive, though not much comes to light. There's more heat than light in this one, certainly. And he's scathing about his guest wearing a $1,000 suit. A lawyer should dress well when he's practicing law. Am I wrong? It shows respect to his clients and everybody else. Especially when appearing on a television show to discuss a serious matter, a guest ought to dress formally. Isn't that right? Would he prefer that Mike Avenatti came on wearing rags or just swimming trunks or what? Mr. Carlson wears expensive suits. Nothing wrong with that. Is he bad? Mr. Carlson, he's a hyper-capitalist saying, yes, billionaires should be exceedingly rich. Why is he suddenly against people having possessions? He's against money. I hadn't realised he turned into some sort of Puritan communist all of a sudden. And so he's a hypocrite as well. And then Mr. Carlson, he was excoriating about the fact that Stormy Daniels was stripping, as though that's Mike Avenatti's fault. She was a stripper and a porn star long before she ever met Mr. Avenatti. That's her chosen career. That's what she's best at, because she makes millions out of it. And suing the president has gained a publicity she couldn't have dreamt of, so it's increased her value enormously. Does she get job satisfaction from this? I don't know. You'd have to ask her. She certainly gives the impression that she does, and yes, I have viewed some of her biological drama. So Mr. Tucker then suggested that the lawyer should pay the client and not the other way around. That's astonishing. Now, Mr. Tucker's got no problem with other people charging through the nose for their services, him being charged a lot. Okay, should Mr. Carlson pay us, the viewers? It's like saying that. It's moronic. Where did that come from? That yes, Mr. Avenatti's got a lot of publicity out of it because he's done lots of work and been touring the television studios. So Stormy likes to make a big profit. Mr. Carlson is a mammon worshipper. He's got no objection to anybody else getting filthy rich. Why on earth should it be wrong for Mr. Avenatti for doing a superb job for his client? You know, the Trump White House suggested that Stormy Daniels was going to pay $20 million in compensation. She hasn't had to pay a penny several months after she revealed all these secrets. The non-disclosure agreement, which certainly Ms. Daniels, or Stephanie Clifford to give her real name, and others, certain wasn't legal, wasn't even signed by Donald Trump. And Mr. Carlson, he wouldn't be clear on this. Did he believe that the president copulated with Stormy Daniels several years ago or not? He said it was only a possibility. I mean, that cuts to the nub of it, because obviously Stormy Daniels would be telling the truth if he did, and the president would be lying. But Tucker Carlson, who adulates President Trump, won't come clean on that, say what's the case. Now, we don't know for absolutely certain that the president had intercourse with her. There's just a very, very high probability. And he's lied about so much, no one would trust a word he says. You'd have to be an idiot to do so. Anyway, so Stormy is exploited, according to Mr. Carlson. Funny that, because Mr. Carlson seems to believe the word exploitation doesn't even exist. He's against the minimum wage. He has no problem with people getting poverty pay in other countries, and he doesn't want to do anything for the American working class, not give them affordable health care, not have food stamps, not have anything, not give them any help towards tertiary education. But all of a sudden, it's exploitation for this woman to make millions of dollars. It's completely illogical. It just defies belief that he should make such a preposterous assertion. So what's so wrong with stripping? How about freedom of expression and indeed pornography? Now, Mr. Carlson, he valorizes the US military, fine, but so many troops, they like going to strip bars. A lot of them watch pornography. Are they evil? Is the US military wicked? Not suggesting that all US troops do this, but at least a significant minority do, I can tell you. I've met some of them who've told me they've done these things. I've met some of them at these shows. Anyway, so do you ever watch pornography? Mr. Avenatti asked Mr. Carlson a pointed question because it's pertinent. If you're railing against how filthy and degrading it is, have you ever seen any? Mr. Carlson wouldn't answer that question. Well, his silence speaks volumes. That's affirmative silence. If the answer was no, he would have said it. But he realized a lot of his viewers are very judgmental, Christian fundamentalists, and they would be disgusted if they realized he'd ever watched this. But they mostly seem to have no problem. The fact that Donald Trump is a serial adulterer, has boasted about the sexual assaults he's committed, knowing he's recorded. What difference does it make that President Trump knew that he was recorded? That he's that shameless, even knowing it's recorded, he will say it, he'll brag about it, because he's so supremely confident that he can get away with sex crimes. And that his willfully stupid base will forgive him these things for which he's never apologized, despite admitting them and then denying them. So was President Trump lying? Is that acceptable? Well, Mr. Carlson wouldn't answer that question. Does the truth matter at all? And Mr. Carlson won't give a clear answer on that one. In fairness to him, he is the interviewer, not the interviewee. Now, this whole Stormy Daniels things, Trump committing adultery, doesn't bother me, really. Well, no, it doesn't bother me at all, to be fair. It's led to an illegal campaign donation, as in the payoff to her channeled via Michael Cohen to buy her silence of the non-disclosure agreement. That's where it was a crime, and that's a crime which definitely occurred. Michael Cohen is going to jail for that one, and we're told it's a witch hunt. It's not a witch hunt. There have been convictions. People have been found guilty. And so Carlson is very punitive. Carlson is very punitive on the law, a stalwart advocate of the death penalty, of mass incarceration, of millions of people being imprisoned for trifling offences, such as possession of illegal substances. But when it comes to rich whites, he thinks it's outrageous that they should ever pay the penalty for their crimes. Miss Daniels has got so much publicity and so much money from Avenatti's defence and all the publicity he's garnered, so his advocacy has been absolutely superb for her. Michael Avenatti, so far as I know, has never lied to the public. And he may have a political career. Mr. Carlson's apoplectic about that. Why is he so acidulous that someone should wish to serve the public? Well, maybe because this man is not far right. The expression far right is often misused, but with regard to Mr. Carlson, that's not the case. When he senses that he's on weak ground, he becomes even more incendiary. He'll be hyper-aggressive, insulting, scathing, things like that. So I think, really, he's a disgrace as a journalist. He's reasonably gifted when it comes to polemical discourse, but he's irrational, unreasonable, spiteful. Well, I have to say I have a lot more time for Mike Avenatti, who retained his composure, who comported himself with decorum, who gave intelligent and convincing answers.